but later on another Meccan horseman called Abdullah attacked Al-Harith and struck him on the shoulder with his sword, and he was carried to the camp of the Muslims suffering from serious wounds. Anyway, that very idolater did not escape death, for Abu Dujana, the red-head bandit hero and adventurer, struck him heavily and cut his head off. During this bitter fight, a desire to sleep overwhelmed the Muslims. That was a security and tranquility to help his slaves, Muslims, as the Quran spoke in this context. Abu Talha said, I was one of those who were possessed by a desire to sleep on Uhud day. On that day, my sword fell off my hand several times. Again and again it fell down, and again I picked it up. In a regular withdrawal and with great bravery and boldness, the Muslims finally retreated to the cover of Mountain Uhud, and then the rest of the army followed them to that safe position. In that manner, the genius of Muhammad foiled that of Khalid bin al-Walid. Ibn Isaac related that when the Messenger of Allah was going on the hillock, he was followed by Ubay bin Khalaf, who was saying, Where is Muhammad? Either I kill him or I will be killed. The companions of Muhammad said, O Messenger of Allah, do you mind if one of us combats with him? But the Messenger of Allah said, Leave him. So when he drew nearer, the Messenger of Allah took the spear from Al-Harith bin As-Sima. He shivered violently in such a way that made all of them scatter in all directions violently. And impulsively then he faced him, observed his clavicle through a gap between the wide opening of the armor and the part of his neck enclosed by. He speared him in that spot. The effect of the stroke was so strong that it made him roll off his horse over and over. When he returned to Quraysh, they found that he had only had a small scratch in his neck. So when blood became congested, he said, By Allah, Muhammad has killed me. Hearing him say so, they said, By Allah, you are afraid to death. By Allah, you are possessed by a devil. He replied, He had already told me when we were in Mecca, I will kill you. By Allah, had he spat on me, he would have killed me. Eventually, the enemy of Allah breathed his last at a place called Sarif, while they were taking him back to Mecca. In a version by Abu Aswad on the authority of Urwa, he was lowing like a bull and saying, By the one in whose hand is my soul, if the pain I am suffering from now were distributed among the people of Al-Majaz, it would cause them to die. During the withdrawal of the Messenger of Allah up to the cover of the mountain, a big rock blocked his way. The Prophet tried to mount it, but having worn a short heavy armor and being seriously wounded, he could not ascend it readily enough. Talha sat in a position that enabled the Prophet to stand on his back. Then he lifted him up till he stood on it. The Prophet then said, Talha, after his job is eligible for the garden paradise when the Messenger of Allah settled down in his headquarters in the hillock. The idolaters started their last attack upon the Muslim. Ibn Isaac related that while the Prophet was on the way to the hillock, a group of Qurayshite elite ascended the mountain. They were led by Khalid ibn Walid and Abu Sufyan. So the Messenger of Allah implored his Lord, saying, O Allah, they, the idolaters, should not be higher in position or in power than us. The Muslims, therefore, Umar bin al-Khattab and some of the immigrants fought the idolaters till they drove them down the mountain. In Al-Maghazi, a book by Al-Umawi, it is stated that the idolaters went up the mountain. So the Messenger of Allah said to Sa'd, drive them off. How can I drive them off by myself without anyone to assist? But the Messenger of Allah repeated the phrase 3 times. Sa'd then took an arrow out of his quiver, shot it at one of them, and killed him. He said, then I took another one I know to be good, and I shot with it another man. Then I took a third I know, and killed a third one. Consequently, they climbed down the mountain. I said to myself, this must be a blessed arrow. I put it in my quiver. He kept it with him till he died. His children kept it with them ever after. Mutilation of the martyrs. That was the last attack made by the idolaters against the Prophet. Being almost certain of his death, the idolaters returned to their camp and started preparations to go back to Mecca. Some of them involved themselves in mutilating the killed Muslims, and so did their women. Women and men cut off the ears, the noses, and the genitals of the martyrs. They even cut open their bellies. For instance, ripped open and chewed it. But finding it unpleasant, she spat it out. She even made the ears and noses of Muslims into anklets and necklaces. Necklaces. 2 incidents occurred during the last hour of the fight, which revealed for certain how far the Muslims were ready to fight and sacrifice in the way of Allah. I was one of those Muslims who fought in Uhud and witnessed the polytheist act of barbarity in mutilating the dead bodies, but I passed them because I couldn't stand it. Then I saw an armed stout idolater pass through the Muslims and say, gather them up and combine them in the way that sheep are gathered and slaughtered. Similarly, I saw an armed Muslim waiting for him. I walked towards them till I stood behind him, comparing both of them. I found that the disbeliever was better than the other in arms and figure. I kept on watching them till they were engaged in single combat. The Muslim thrust at the disbeliever with his sword. That went down his hip and split it into 2. When the Muslim unveiled his face, he said, what about that, Ka'b? I am Abu Dajana. Some Muslim women came to the battlefield when the fight was over. Anas said, I saw Aisha with Sulaim. Their garments were gathered up so I could see their anklets.